there's a thing that people say, which is vary your angles. This is a nonsense idea, right? Like, yes, of course you're varying the angles. It's not random. Varying the angles makes it sound like, well, this is like there should be a shot from the ceiling, and there should be a shot from through a glass coffee table, and it's like, that's stupid. Like, you don't need to make something more interesting. Let the content of it drive that.
I'm curious, without giving away too many trade secrets of yours, how do you achieve that gritty style that you've come up with? Because it's very textural. It looks like, ink is being splattered. You use a lot of whites, I'm sure. Like after you've inked, you go back over it.
Sure.
Do you mind getting into the details? I'm sorry, some of it's digital?
Some of the corrections and stuff are digital, just for the sake of getting things.
So take us through the process of, like, if you're inking a page. Yeah. Tell us how you go about doing that.
First, I barely figure out what it is before I start. I don't have a lot of preliminary work. I do feel like a lot, I've intensely worked my whole life on visual storytelling stuff. And I feel like I see the stuff in my head, and maybe I'm a little bit impatient with some aspects of it. And probably, I know that you can go through and criticize, there's a tangent here, or there's problems here, or whatever, throughout my pages. But I also like a bit of fucked upness to things. So for me, it doesn't feel kind of like alive if I've spent too much time painfully composing everything. It's really important to me that things feel like they have energy and that there's a life to them. And part of that for me is diving in, right? I'm writing the thing, right? So in the first place, I'm sitting there with the script, and I'll write full script. I know I just knocked all these other people for writing full script, but I'm also the artist, right? So I'm making the plan for how I'm going to draw the thing while I'm writing it. If I've written the script, or sometimes I haven't written a full script, like with Kinski, where they are just notes that I'm going off of. I will make notes like an old man in on a island, like on a legal pad, right? And on paper, right? And then sometimes I'm just going from the notes into drawing things. I'll make dialogue notes and stuff like that, and then but it's all changeable. It's all changeable till it's done. But if I've written the script and if it's a freelance thing, it's a full script that I'm giving I try to give a script to the editor that anybody could draw, right? I don't do some, kind of sketchy, he's an artist, so he doesn't quite know how to do it kind of thing. No, it's a full script that anybody else could take away and draw. And so the editor knows, very clearly what I'm going to do, right? And then I don't go through a process of really thumbnailing stuff or figuring things out and that closely. I basically just have it in my head, and I jump to drawing on the board. Sometimes I screw it up. Sometimes I almost on every job, I'll have a couple pages that I throw out because I just don't think they're any good at the beginning, or I haven't found it yet. But I basically just jump straight to the page, and I don't pencil very tightly. Like, my pencils are very loose, and it's kind of almost interchangeable with, I can, I don't go, here, draw all the pencils and then go back, do all of the inks. It's not like that. It's like a free for all. So well, look, we've got a computer. You can change this stuff. It's not, it's not like the old days where you're, where the thing that's drawn on the board is what's sent to the printer, it's, I can change things digitally. I can move things around if they're not working. and I'll adjust the sizes of some things and make some, and make corrections and stuff digitally. It's not, it's not sacrosanct that that everything be drawn on paper, but I do draw everything on paper. It's just, but it's all a process. It's process art. It's not, it's not a little perfect thing of its own. It's to the end of putting out the comic.
It's kind of like storyboarding, where it's like the storyboard is the bridge to get to the film, to finish film, and then the comic pages, while even though you do sell them, is still an intermediary to the final product.
Yeah. I mean, I sell them, but not. I don't think that. But I mean, I think a lot of my pages are not that desirable to people because because I will never ever do like a big splashy page or something that would be attractive to like an aftermarket type, art dealer type of thing, because I have no interest in it. If it's not telling the story, it's not in there. So like there will be big splashy pages, and especially in superhero books and stuff. But like even like my original pages, I think are a lot. I mean, you were talking about getting the texture and the grit and stuff like that. Like, all of the junk laying around in my studio, like it's just sponges or toothbrushes or whatever. Well, I will use anything, I will, if like, the pattern of a paper towel and like just dipping it in ink and messing around but anything. I love textures. I love finding textures that make interesting textures. I will pick things up randomly at the art store or wherever just to try.
Primarily when you're doing line work, are you using brush and pen, or is there a specific
primarily brush, some pen, some like marker things for lines, for straight edges and stuff. But but initially, actually, so like for a long time, I drew boards on paper, right? Before everything was digital, right? And when I was doing that, I would use a brush pen to draw the boards. And so I got very good at using that brush pen because I had to do it all real fast and so like. Then when I started, and that's actually what gave me the confidence to ink my own stuff when I went back to comics, right? Because I was like, well, I'm already basically doing that. Like, why couldn't I just do it in comics? And so my early comics, like Heathen Town and probably some of the early Marvel stuff and stuff, I'm still just inking with the brush pen. But at a certain point, I just felt like this is hemming me in. Like I can only do so much with this. Like I can't, so I just started making myself use the brush, and learning how to the extent I ever did, how to just draw with the brush. Because, the brush can go between making a fine line and then just like making a smashy, disgusting line, and that kind of versatility was the thing that I needed to kind of get into like a style that I was, I know I did that throughout the run on Hulk with Jeff Parker, and then but I think it was really like those Planet of the Apes. I did 4 issues of the Planet of the Apes comics, and then we wrote a lot more than that, but I drew the first 4 of them. And like, I think I was starting to really find it there, and then in Invisible Republic. And then I did stuff like, I did this one shot called The Belfry, this horror one shot called The Belfry, which is, is crazy and was drawn like this big and is like very rough. Like, and I like that, I like trying to do something that just feels like it's from the id, it's just, just spewing it out,
I just love seeing like the old Mebius airtight garage that I think he did smaller than printed size, and you just
they're
like
small,
it's like gosh, it still looks so good, but there's something more electric about it because it's that it gets more character in the line,
definitely.
Can we talk a little bit about story here, where because Lance and I were just just talking about this before you came on, and I read Kinski last night, and he saw your film that you directed years and years ago, and I had seen it years ago, but I didn't quite remember it as well.
Search us. I don't look out.
And what was odd about it is I think I said something to the effect of it feels like a simple plan. Like there's somebody who just keeps making bad decisions. And and I'm like, wow, that's so interesting. These projects are years apart, but there's a theme there that seems to run through them. Is that something that's a reflective of your life, do you think? Or
that I've made a lot of poor decisions?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to, but characters like that attract you to some
characters
degree.
That have that have a goal that is intangible to everybody else but them, right? Is the thing. And I feel like as opposed to, I stole money from the mob and I'm on the run from the mob or whatever, somebody who creates kind of their own problem is part of, is something that's compelling for me. And look, I love film noir, and film noir is not about, big shadows. Film noir is about people making poor choices, and so being driven to make choices that are clearly not great, but they feel like it's in pursuit of something important. And in that book, Kinski, it's the thing that he thinks is so important. Stealing the dog is not, stealing a dog from a family, because he feels like they are not taking good enough care of it. It is like, and then everything goes wrong from that. Like he's it's all hubris, there's something about characters like that compels me, like fuck ups and people who don't, who are trying, or they are, or they seem to have very clear ideas about what they want, but what they want is not realistic, those are the kind of things. I mean, this doesn't always apply very well to superhero comics, right? Like like this is not really like the superhero comic that I've done that I'm the most invested in was the Green Lantern Earth One books that were, they're out of continuity, and I could make the character whoever, and so it's between that, what we're talking about, but also giving characters arcs, like having them go someplace in the course of a story, right? I feel like I did that in the Green Lantern books, and a lot of people acted like, what's this weird magic trick? And I'm just like, it's having a story, right? It's like going someplace, right? Like you just want them to start one place and end up a different place, who they are as a person, and so that part I think is valuable, but it's also difficult to do in superhero comics unless it, because those things are, if it's just the kind of treadmill of superhero comics where the whole point is to not break them and put them back the way they were. I'm not very good at that. I want to break them, and I want to go, go someplace,
And in looking at your comic work, I could see you have a director's eye. Like, where to put the camera, the angles that you choose and everything is always serving the story.
Yeah.
And as a result, you get these very dramatic panels that you're drawing. Not because you're trying to be showy. It's because you're telling the story.
Yeah.
You also talked about, and I think I heard this in a previous interview, about the power of juxtaposition.
Like, this is something I've thought about from the very beginning. Like that Hitchcock very nicely illustrates this idea that that it's about the two images being juxtaposed. It's about, the cut is the important thing, right? So take just like a neutral shot of a man looking, and if you cut it with a baby, it gives you, a cute baby. It gives you the impression that the guy is a nice guy, and he's looking at a baby. And you cut the exact same neutral expression with, a shot of a nude woman, and he's, and he seems to be lascivious,
he's
right?
a pervert,
or whatever.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But the shots are identical, right? The shot of the guy is just a neutral shot of his face and are identical. And it's creating that, it's using the juxtaposition of images to create that third idea in the, in the viewer, reader, or whatever's head that's like the most important key thing, right? Like, and in comics, it's about putting those, juxtaposing those panels, but it's also about the page turn and, and how you, how you let the story spool out. But thinking about, opposing things and the juxtaposition of things is so much. I mean, like, the book Invisible Republic was very much about, it was set in two different time periods, and it was the two different time periods are in dialogue with each other the entire time through the story. And that's also a thing that I like to do.
So obviously that's a tool that you could use in your comics, but also does it come from film originally, do you think? Or
only in that I understood it that way, but I mean, I think I think it's a natural visual storytelling thing. When you're telling a story in comics, it's panels, going together. In film, it's cuts. It's a piece of film and a piece of film, or a piece of visual media, and and you're cutting them together, and that cut is how you're creating the third idea, and and in the head of the person who's taking it in. And I think you can't not think about that. Like, to the point of not being necessarily flashy, one of the things Hitchcock talked about a lot is, don't try to shoot everything in a stylish, impressive way, right? And I feel like the way that translates for me is everything can't have impact, right? Like, if everything, and I know Jack Kirby disagrees with me, but if everything has impact, nothing has impact for me. Like, it's just one note. It's it's making superficial choices for, to try to impress people, as opposed to a kind of flow to the story where you get into the more mundane parts, so that the more intense parts are more intense. If every single scene is intense, there's a movie called The Bad and the Beautiful. It's a movie from the late 40s. It's about Hollywood, and there's a scene in it where Kirk Douglas is a kind of ambitious producer, and he's hired this older director, and he's criticizing the director on set for the way that he's shooting a scene, for not being stylish enough or exciting enough. And the director says to him, "What you want is a climax. If every scene is a climax, then then you have a bad movie." And like, it's I think it's a mistake to not step back and see the whole thing. It's not you're not accomplishing everything in every moment. You're telling a whole story.
So give us an example quickly, just of a comic page that would employ that method, just so our viewers understand.
I think that it's, the most obvious version is, a quiet scene or a dialogue scene or something like that. There's a thing that people say a lot, which is vary your angles, right? Vary the angles. It's like, this is a nonsense idea, right? Like, yes, of course you're varying the angles to like create interest and whatever, but it's not random. Varying the angles makes it sound like, well, this is like, there should be a shot from the ceiling, and there should be a shot from through a glass coffee table, and there should be, it's like, that's stupid.
Just for the sake of doing it. Yeah.
Right. It just,
You're driving the design of the page, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I used to hear this when I was, when I was younger, and I would go around and show my portfolio for comics. But I also hear it when I, these days, when I see people talking about comics, and it's like, that's the wrong way to go about this. The way to go about this is what's the important thing? What do we need people to see? And if we're talking about like a way to modulate the tone of a comic overall, I'm not a fan of long scenes of people sitting at tables talking in comics. Certainly not 9-panel grids of people staring into the camera and in all that are all identical. But it's you don't need to make something more interesting. Let the content of it drive that, right? Like if it's if it is a quiet scene, it can be dealt with in a very simple way because that is the lower part of the big orchestral movement of the comic, right? And like if you're working overtime to make that seem interesting, you're not thinking of the right thing. You need to think of the big picture of it. Everything, if you're trying to make everything flashy, it will ultimately be, probably popular. I don't know, like, it's probably a good idea, but but in my world of how I think about this stuff, it ultimately will undermine the comic.
Shane and I really appreciate you guys tuning into our YouTube channel today. If you enjoyed this short conversation and would like to see the entire interview, then please head on over to our Substack, where you'll not only find all of our full-length interviews, but a ton of super interesting posts that we've created just for you guys. Link is in the description box below. So until next time, thanks for watching.